Sudhindra and Leena had asked me to speak right in the beginning, and I'm glad that I did not speak in the beginning. But I will talk a little bit about now, reflecting on many things that has been talked about. The first reaction that I have is that it appears that in India, the good leadership, wherever it exists, has delivered. Good teachers, wherever they exist, have delivered. The system has not delivered, by and large. And that is true. And I think we have made changes in systems, but not good enough. And this workshop is very, very useful in doing some systematic thinking that what needs to be done. What is also very clear that after having read the paper and then seeing the reflection and reactions out here, that everything has multiple way of looking at things, and we often don't understand the different way of looking at things, and thereby any policies or systems will not work if that is so. Now, having said that, let me start with by pointing out that I remember that I work in my primary discipline is a telecommunications discipline. I am in the communications area, and it is often said that the pace at which the communication theory, and I'm talking about communication theory, I'm not talking about communication devices, are changing, is that we believe that the half-life of any new knowledge is about 4 years, or 3 years probably. So basically, when we teach a student something, by the time they graduate, it's probably 50% gone. Another 3-4 years, 50% is gone. How does one keep up to date in something like this? How does one remain knowledgeable? And I think by and large, science and technology, the pace at which things are changing, I agree that Newton's law don't change, and yet the way things are changing, that's what the situation is. I remember this being reflected by one of my teacher at IIT Kanpur, long back, Professor C.N.R. Rao, when he one day sort of said that we really don't teach you here. What we teach, specifics are not important. What is important is we get you to learn, and I think that was talked about by you, and I think the basic education, as far as I'm concerned, is about learn to learn. Very often we forget, and I have, in my 30 years of experience, we forget that learning is not something, a process that happens in short time. Learning is a lifelong process. I remember I thought that I went to very good undergraduate school at IIT Kanpur, learned a lot, and yet I think after that, pretty much every year I've learned twice as much as I learned in IIT Kanpur. And it's only when you start, and the simple thing is that the same material, if I have gone through and looked at the same material, but when I read it again and when I understand it again, it's something very different. And when I teach it, first time it makes some sense, and over time it has a total different meaning. To the extent today, when I go to teach, the tension that I have is similar to the tension that a theater artist will have, is that you are going there for 40 minutes. You need to kind of perform. You need to really make an impact on the students. I think we very often forget that these are young minds of 18 years, 17 years, with their minds even more torn apart than even our own minds were on looking at different things, and they will only absorb so much. There may be some very bright ones who will absorb everything, a lot, probably, and they don't need us, but there are a lot of others who will only absorb so much. So I think what is more important is not to try to sort of say that they must learn all these things. I think we try to teach too much. What we don't teach enough is concepts. What we don't make enough is interesting. What we don't do enough is learn to learn. And I think that's what she was also pointing out. And my own feeling is that that is where the autonomy matters probably more than anything else. As an autonomous professor, I go and teach. I basically nowadays teach a course. Well, all of you use computers. Let us tear it apart. In this semester, we'll do zero mathematics. We won't even go through basic physics or basic chemistry. And yet we'll try to learn from whatever little that you know, how to go step by step and understand everything about this computer, from hardware, software. Can we build this whole thing? And I think when we take approaches like this, we pretty much cover all the material that we would have otherwise covered, but we do it very differently. And we would have never done it if some other faculty member would set the paper, or if I agree that book reading is very, very important, and I don't want to discount that. But we do encourage people to not read only books, but also go to the Google. Very often when they ask me a question, I sort of say, well, I think Google will give you a better answer, or we go to Whither, that will give you a better answer than I will give. Maybe I'll tell you something, but go and do that. You can search yourself and get this information. But this concept, why does it work? Why does it not work? What are the relationship? How is it relate to the society? How does it relate to the politics? How does it relate to the national and international interests? I agree that there are things which are universal, but there are a whole lot of things which are not universal. And I think we need to really, because unless we kind of teach them things to start looking at things from a very local point of view, from a very different point of view than what is available, I don't think the teaching takes place. For example, I'll give you one very simple example, which I've often given to Sudhindra long back. For example, I remember that when I came to IIT Madras as a professor in 1981, I wanted to get a telephone, and it took me 8 years to get a telephone. And many of the, gray-haired people will understand that, but most of these youngsters don't even understand. It was not about telephone. I wanted to get a two-wheeler, and I booked a two-wheeler. I liked Bajaj Chetak, and I went and paid the money. I said, 4 years is a waiting period. It will be delivered to you at the end of 4 years. I wanted to get a LPG gas cylinder, and I was told, where is your name in the waiting list? He says, no, it was never put. This is the first time I'm coming to Chennai. The person said, you can put it, but he told me that I don't think this lifetime you will get the LPG gas cylinder. And there are many, and the interesting thing that happened is that when I got married, one of our friends walked in with a gas cylinder, and she had 2 gas cylinders. She transferred one to connection to us, and that's how we got the connection. So it was a very different life. But since telephony was one area that I thought that I understood, I started looking at it, and why does it take 8 years to get a telephone? And of course we saw that the government completely controlled the telephone. We sort of said maybe something can be done about that. But we finally also found out that the investment required in putting up a telephone was 40,000 rupees at that time, in late 80s. 40,000 rupees was the investment required, and by that time we had figured out that the interest rate in India is about 15%. So if you invest 40,000 rupees, you need 15% as just to pay the interest for something like that. Then you need to pay depreciation. You need to recover that 40,000, maybe in about at a 12 to 15% you pay depreciation. Operation cost, I checked around with people, and some of my students were in that time in Department of Telecommunications, I found out was also about 15%. So you add 45% of 40,000 rupees, you needed 18,000 rupees per month, per year as a revenue from every telephone to break even. Now 18,000 rupees was 1,500 rupees, way back in 80s. Our income was less than 1,500. A faculty member salary was 1,400 rupees at that time. Now only we calculated that assuming you can spend 5% to 6% of your income on telephony, we found that less than 2% of India's population can really pay for the telephony. This was just wholesale imported from outside and brought in out here. And we realized that, and in fact, India's telephones were 2% of India's homes had telephones. So when we started understanding the whole way of looking at it, things changed. And we sort of said, what can we do? If we want to get 100 million telephones, we back calculated in this very way and sort of said, we will require the cost to be brought down to 10,000 rupees. Now what will bring down the price to 10,000 rupees? And that's when we started looking at that, saying this is the research that is being done in the West, this is what they will bring down, this is what will, but this they will not do. Let us focus on that. And that was a local loop. That's how we started wireless in local loop. It looked impossible at that time, but somewhere with some foolish beliefs, and very often you have to be a fool and stubborn to try out something which looks impossible, and we were able to break in. And since then, we have actually tried to do many, many things like that. What I'm pointing out is that very often the teaching has to be in local context. If you don't teach your student to think in this manner, and to try to take every problem, every law, every this thing, and see, okay, what does its application, what does it mean to your nation, to your society, to your people, I think we do a very incomplete job. So that's another thing that I feel is very, very important. I think if we can make things interesting, try to teach less, we probably will create, we will be able to attract students, we will be able to make a difference. And I think what she was pointing out was the most important. We'll be able to create at least enough number of people. And I think number of scientists that we will make in a class of 100, if we can make 5 scientists, that's great. And that's at IIT level. At any other institute, probably 2 scientists. We won't have many more, but we need to inspire them, create the passion. And that passion comes from many of these kind of things. So autonomy, as far as I am concerned, is very different meaning. It is very key to be able to do that. And I understand what was pointed out, that it was an attempt to standardization, and the autonomy was sort of saying, well, at least let's try to do this, standard. There are other point that I want to point out, that I remember also counting the number of engineering colleges that we had at that time in 1984 or 85. We had about 100 engineering colleges, and we are graduating about 25,000 engineers a year. And I know lots of parents used to come to me, sort of saying, my child, see, my daughter is so bright. You check her out. She is probably as good as anybody. Somehow, I want her to get into engineering education. What can I do? And we had only 25,000 seats. And we had devised all these JE and this and that to filter out things, people, and which is basically not far better than tossing a coin as far as I'm concerned. So basically what did we do? We were starving India. And at that time there was a very, very big question that was open. The government didn't have enough money to open more engineering colleges. All the 100 engineering colleges by that time was government, or most of them, maybe 1 or 2, maybe not government. BITS Pilani was not, but that also was supported by the government to a large extent. That's the time the idea of private engineering colleges came up. And all of us were scared, these private engineering colleges, the quality will be very bad and all that. And fortunately, some people overruled us and opened these colleges. Of course, quality did suffer, but today we have such a large number of engineering colleges and probably much more number of science colleges. At least we have been able to increase quantity. So one problem we have solved, that today people are able to get into higher education. Earlier we were forbidding them, not allowing them to get into higher education. Today, the second thing that we solved, again with all the criticism, I accept all the criticism, but this whole reservation and whatever other means has been able to bring in people with diverse background, with poorer background, with rural background into these colleges. I agree we have to go a long way, but to some extent we seem to have solved the quantity problem and equity problem. Quality problem we have not solved, and we have not made much of that. That's where the today's focus has been, the quality problem. I also believe, like most of you have sort of said, that teachers are key to education. Without teachers, anything else you do will not make a difference. And unfortunately, for years our respect to the teachers was also not that high. In at least last 20 years, I'm not talking about what happened 30 years back. That may have been much better, and the salaries that they were getting was very, very poor, and that was causing serious problems. So many of us fought, and I remember that even this was one of the key things that SAC PM tried to do, is we have to make teachers salary as attractive. And it took a lot of efforts, but finally I think we have got somewhere. I won't say that we have got all the way, but hopefully, as I pointed out, with a better salary, some better people will start getting attracted. Scientist salary in similar manner, we have tried to increase. And today, at least I consider my salary very decent. They may still, if you compare to somebody in business, sure, there may be, but only if they are business leaders, you can see that they can get much more. Well, ordinary business person who gets into business probably doesn't get all that much more. There are several other issues. The first issue that concerns me is this whole financing model. How do we really finance education? Now, the government is putting in certain amount of money, and hopefully over time that can increase a little bit more. But in a country like ours, where there is going to be huge number of other demands for higher education, only a certain percentage will be allocated. And with larger and larger number of people getting into the higher education, we have to figure out a method of financing it. Where is the thinking? And I won't say that this is a SAC PM thinking. It is wrong to be. SAC PM is not necessarily one, but a lot of people are starting to think around. I was talking to a journalist who was here from Times of India, and I was talking to her and figuring out what does it really mean. She says that she paid 1,000 rupees as fees for her undergraduate about 6-7 years back. Then for, of course, journalism course, she had to pay 2 lakhs for about a year. And now her salary is of the order of 4 lakhs rupees. Now you discount that high 4 lakhs, but even if your salary is 2 lakhs rupees, the question is, if your salary is 2 lakhs rupees, somehow for first 4-5 years, can you pay maybe 15% of that towards your education? Now, can you pay 25,000 rupees, 30,000 rupees for first 4-5 years for the education that you have had? If your salaries are 2 lakhs rupees, can you pay 25,000 rupees? If that is so, can we figure out a way that people actually pay for the education later? Now, and therefore the financing of these colleges, education viable with all the government subsidy. What all the government needs to do? First of all, instead of banks giving loan at 12%, 11%, 13%, maybe one can think of government coming out with a program and giving loans to students, maybe at 0 interest, that they pay after they graduate, after they finish their higher education and get into a job. Maybe the amount that they pay towards paying back this loan is tax deductible. Can we make attractive things like this, such that people who do get 2 to 3 lakhs rupees salary, and that's a low end 2 lakhs rupees, can start paying 25,000, 30,000 rupees over 4 years, 5 years, and therefore pay for the education? Can we create that kind of situation? If we can create that kind of situation, we will create a financial model. And my worry is that if we don't create a financial model, and with all the subsidy can go in multiple things. Number one, creating the capital expenses for the colleges. Number two, in seeing that the loans are available at zero interest, and maybe even giving tax deduction when they start paying, and maybe a little bit more to the colleges and expansion and things like that. But yet we have to get the people to pay. Otherwise, I don't see the financial model. Remember, this is happening in a very expanding market. Unless we are willing to charge the students in some nice manner, I understand that we cannot burden them too much suddenly, because that may often result into denial of education. So we must ensure that any financial